Good time. A well-intended weasel has a bad luck trip with consequences for everyone. Here we have Good Time. It is a crime, suspense, thriller, a little bit of a journey of self-discovery, which unfortunately can be said about most things. We have Robert Pattinson starring. It is directed, written by Benny and Josh Safdie. Benny also acts in it as well. He's our other kind of main character here. And it came out in 2017. I saw this thing in theaters, and I was blown away. I was really impressed. This is definitely a great film to catch in theaters. But as you can see, I bought the DVD as well, and I've seen it since then. So, Good Time. Challenging, contemporary, urgent, anxious, stylish, gritty, glossy. I'm going to sneeze. I am going to give you some spoilers here. Not yet, but I'll let you know when they're coming. So there are spoilers in this one, but it'll be towards the end, and I'll let you know before I get there. But to summarize without spoilers, and to try to get you to see this thing because it's super cool, and to explain some of the adjectives I gave it, and also the little intro before the intro there, I would say that it is a story about brotherly love, family, loyalty, kind of like how far would you go, what would you do in these scenarios for your family. There's a lot of taking advantage of others. There's a lot of ease in lying, and it asks the viewer, do the ends justify the means, or could they? I would say the style of this thing kind of softens the blow of things too. I mentioned gritty and glossy. So first let's get into just what do we like with all those things. We'll just pick that apart. So we have this story. We've got two brothers. We've got a lot of events that happen. It's very suspenseful. Like I mentioned, it's a thriller. There's things going on in their lives that are definitely fast-paced. And there's consequences to those actions, and there's problems. There's a lot of conflict in this movie. For the most part, this movie takes place over one night. A very full, long night. There's a lot of on-the-fly problem solving, a lot of smart decision-making, quick and snappy decisions. Or I shouldn't say just one night, one day, 24-hour period almost. But some of these things just end up being negative. They end up negatively impacting someone else because they're trying to get ahead, right? Thus the weasel comment at the beginning. A well-intended weasel, but a weasel nonetheless. And during the course of this night, this day, that problems are trying to get figured out, and more problems end up being created, and there's roadblocks, and there's barriers, and there's just a constant, you're just on edge. Like, this is such a suspenseful film, but it is so different than other things that I've seen. And part of it just because there is this initial issue that has created all these other issues in a way. There's just like a backdrop to this that's always looming in the back of your mind as to like, well, this is like for family. This is like trying to help somebody out that is in a disadvantaged position. There's enough backstory just to keep it super interesting without giving us a whole lot, because we just kind of jump right into the action pretty quickly. And again, that urgentness, that anxiety, that it's just so present, and just keeping on the edge of your seat, wondering what's happening next. It's not anxious in the way that it's like a big thing happens and you're like working up to like, what's the next thing that's going to happen? It's just like hitting you, boom, 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 boom. But you do have like basically you end up feeling for a moment like, okay, like we got it figured out kind of, but what's going to happen next? And then you're going to get pulled back and like, oh, I thought we had it figured out. We don't have it figured out? Crap, what's going to happen next? Well, how are we going to solve this problem now? So it's not an uncomfortable anxious, I don't think, but it keeps you on the edge of your seat. So the comment about it being gritty in a glossy way, and it's a very stylish film. It's incredibly contemporary. At the same time, it borrows a lot of cues from, like, I would say, like retro wave. Some of the colors being used, the music especially. There's a weird 80s influence on this thing without it seeming like retro or throwbacky at all. The music that they use fits so well that unless you were familiar with retro wave or new wave and how that's kind of like coming back into form, and being really popular in certain circles, like, you might not realize that's. I mean, if you didn't grow up with 80s movies too, like, I don't know. It fits so well. It didn't give me like 80s vibes, but I recognized, like, okay, we've got this soundtrack going on here, and just some of the colors and stuff we're playing with. It doesn't. I don't think it's supposed to feel like the 80s. That's not what it's doing. But it's taking these sights and sounds to a degree and placing them. I mentioned this was published in 2017. Released in 2017, and it is of the era that it was published in. It's not meant to be a throwback. It's like, this is 2017 right now, or 2016 or whatever, and it just all fits. It's just so, again, how do I describe stylish? It's funny because on the cover it says a pure cinematic thrill. That's really bold, but for once it actually kind of lines up. Again, just everything, just the pacing of it, the camera work, the styling, the lights. The photography, if you want to call it that. Casting was great as well. The acting is obviously good. Music, it's just a whole piece, and it is challenging in some ways. That gritty and the glossy way thing. Getting back to that, because I'm trying to explain how, like, stylish it is and what that means, and it's difficult. It's just got a lot of style. It's not plain, like, it's very purposeful, but it is high style. Think of Supreme brand. Think of something that's just, I don't know. It's more 90s throwback than 80s, not in the music, but in, like, some of, like, the things that they're wearing. But they're being worn almost like in a don't care way, except that now it's like, no, that's the stuff we want. We want those things that look like these old windbreakers and whatever else. So it ends up coming off as this, like, highly fashionable film in every regard, like, fashionable and stylish, not just with what they're wearing. It's not just the costume, or the wardrobe. It is how it is being filmed, and what are we seeing, and how are we seeing it. Incredibly contemporary, just incredibly contemporary with what people are saying and why they're saying it and how they're acting. But anyway, gritty in a glossy way. It is gritty, but I don't mean it's gritty in, like, some stuff when you call it gritty, like, it's not just the actions, but it's the design, and this is not in the design, it's in the actions. It is how people are talking, it is the situations that are happening, how people are dealing with those situations. That's the gritty part. But it is done in this glossy way because, again, the film is incredibly stylish. So, if you want something with fast-paced flavor, something fast-paced with flavor, this is fantastic. High suspense, a little bit of outside-the-box setup for this this journey that we're on, and again, incredibly contemporary. So, has a very, very up-to-date feel to it, and a lot of energy. But there is this tie back. It's not just like, oh, this is an action movie and whatever, and like, no, there's like a legitimate tie to, like, an emotional, familial relationship. It's just not in the forefront. It's the catalyst. It's in there in the beginning and the end, but all the way through the middle, it is why things are happening. So, yeah, highly entertaining. I would say function-wise, I wouldn't consider it an important film, but it's highly entertaining. And it can ask the viewer to either just be part of the journey and forget about it, but it also, I think, gives the viewer opportunity to weigh in and kind of ask, like, is Connie a bad guy? Connie being the main character, who is played by Robert Pattinson. You know, like, why is he doing this stuff or that? Like, is he a bad guy? I don't know, you know? Because the situation is everything. He's put himself in that situation to a degree, and we don't have all the facts. So in some ways, this is kind of like a very small slice of life story as well. Again, like the journey of self-discovery thing. I'll get more into those things during the spoiler section, which is about to come through here, but there is enough substance here. It is not just like a thriller, suspense, action, like just this fast-paced moving constantly, and no, it is more than that. There is more depth to it, but it's done so subtly that I don't think a lot of people would realize that they're asking themselves these great questions of, like, do the ends justify the means, or what would I do, or like, what if I was in that situation, or like, you know, why is he like that, you know? So in that aspect, I think it's pretty great. Where is it on my shelf? It's pretty high in my shelf. It is not top shelf, but it is pretty darn close. It's like the closest it could be to being top shelf without being top shelf. So it almost may as well be top shelf, but I feel more comfortable just putting it high on my shelf, right underneath top shelf. It's just all those things. I don't know what would make it. I wouldn't change anything about it. But it just, for me, for it to be top shelf, I think a little more of that depth would come through in a little bit, but it doesn't need to. Like, I don't want to change this. Like, it is fantastic. It is great. It's just really difficult to get to my top shelf. It doesn't stick maybe long enough. There's something about it that high action does overpower some of those other things that... Like, those questions that I'm asking aren't deep enough for me to really think about it and have great conversations after for a long period of time. There's a little bit of that, but not a lot. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. But it is in this middle ground is what makes it so great, because it's not just an action film. Like, for me to get on my top shelf, like, it'd be really difficult to do through, like, just a suspense action thriller without being something like a psychological thriller, which this is not. Psychological thrillers can get onto my top shelf pretty easily if there's enough of that honest depth and a lot of questions that you would ask yourself and think about. And again, just the nature of a psychological thriller with what I really enjoy taking in media-wise makes it easier than just a straight-up action movie, which this is not either. So it does a great job of being in this middle ground and I would say being a little genre breaking for sure. But let's get into spoilers right now. Let's do that. Spoiler section here. So, I'm not going to go and run through everything in the movie, but we have Connie and we have his brother. We don't know if they are brothers by blood. We don't know we don't know enough about their relationship. But we do have a little bit of backstory of, like, he's like, fuck grandma, like, profanes. But he's like, fuck grandma, you don't need her, like, I'm here to take care of you, like, whatever, like, let's get out of this place. Like, he's in there seeing, like, a counselor, like the, oh man, I forget his name, played by Benny, though, by Benny Safdie, and it's just like, he's in there getting help, like, he is not as cognitively able, and that's incredibly apparent, and Connie says repeatedly in the movie to other people, like, he's mentally handicapped or whatever. I think that's the term he uses. And he wants to look out for him. He wants to do what's best for him. But we don't know anything about Connie's background either. And he's incredibly rough around the edges. And we don't know why he makes the choices he makes. But he is used to taking advantage of people. And he's used to trying to... He's got a charm about him that is so interesting. Because he's so rough around the edges, but he can play to people of different kinds. But they're vulnerable people. He's taking advantage of vulnerable people throughout this film to get what he wants. But what does he want? What he really wants is to just set himself up to be with his brother maybe be more financially stable. Maybe that's why they robbed the bank in the first place. But we're like, why did you do that? Because if you didn't do that, none of this other crap would have happened. And now that he did that, now his brother's like in jail, and he's just desperate to get him out. And he's got one roadblock after another, and he's just trying. Some of that grittiness that I mentioned, like, holy crap. When you think about, like the guy that he breaks out of the hospital that's not his brother, but we think it is for a long time, that dude, the fact that he just, like, pours all that LSD into, like, the security guard's mouth, holy smokes. Like, that's not a small thing. Like, that guy's gonna maybe be messed up for life. Like, those are the type of things that I'm like, that's gritty and just like, whoa, it's a hard to swallow scenario, but presented in a very, like, glossy package. We know that at the very end, I'm not going to go through all the events here, but it's a whirlwind. It's crazy. It's fantastic. But we know that at the end, that same counselor that was at the beginning, if you want to call him a counselor, but this dude's, I don't know what to call him, caseworker maybe, that he says something like, your brother did the right thing. I think he's where he's supposed to be and you're where you're supposed to be. And it's just like, so he whatever he did, I think he turned himself in, is the implication. That's not true. He got caught by the cops. What am I thinking? He got busted. He didn't turn himself in. But whatever he did, he ended up, because he wanted to get his brother out of jail, but he didn't want to go to jail doing it. So that's the other thing, is like, how you could have got your brother out of jail maybe a lot quicker if you had just gone to the cop and said, hey, this is what happened, this is me, my brother doesn't belong here, he's not capable, there's no, he didn't have the capacity to make this decision. I made this decision for him. He's got he doesn't have the mens rea. he didn't have the intention, basically, to commit this crime. So he could have done that, and that would have been more honorable to do. But of course, then we wouldn't have this whole story and this crazy night that happens. And it's interesting though, because yeah, he didn't want to do that, but then this guy saying, like, your brother is where he's supposed to be, you're where you're supposed to be. I'm glad that he did what he did. But what did he do other than just, like, once he got caught, he told the truth, right? But we don't know a lot of the times what his motives are always. Like, did they really need that money? Or is he just used to doing bad crap all the time? Because he is so used to taking advantage of people. It's with such ease. But he is also wickedly smart. Like, the charmingness of him is kind of cringy, but, like, he's thinks on his feet, and he has to. But he problem solves amazingly quickly and well, and that's part of what gives him such dimension too, and why we might have trouble just putting him in a certain category and saying, yeah, Connie sucks, like, this guy is an idiot and whatever. No, he's clearly very smart, but it's more street smarts, right? I don't think he's very book smart, which is fine, but there's a lot of decisions that I'm sure he could have made differently that would have put him in a different place. And it doesn't mean you need to be book smart to do that, or academic, but to set himself up maybe with a stable career or something. We don't know his backstory, though. That's the other thing, is we have to have a certain amount of empathy too, because we don't know where he's coming from. We just know that he screwed up and put himself in a situation he's trying to get out. Anyway, I think that's all I've got to say about it. Good time. I am curious about the title as well, because, like, I don't remember it being said in the movie, like a hokey, like, nod to just, like, a little nudge and wink, like, oh, good time, there it is. I wonder why it's called that, because other than the irony of, like, this is not a good time, but it's a good time, like, you're watching it, and it's just, like, it's not cheeky, but it's just got this, again, that's that high style in this thing. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it. It's a tough one, but it's pretty darn good, and you should watch it. Good time.